Right, we've seen this question before. Some companies do say, what do we do if we spend so much money on training and then the staff is sort of super well trained, they leave the company and then they get a much better paid job. So isn't training maybe a waste of time? Well, I would say no. I don't think it's a waste of time, because think about this here. What would happen if we have staff that are not trained properly? They're still in the job, they don't really know what they're doing, they're not very productive, the quality of work is low, there's communication difficulties. Really, this is a bad situation. So at the end of the day, although it's expensive, we do need to think about organising some training for staff. It does cost money, but it's actually money well spent. Now, also, training is also useful for the staff. So not only is the company benefiting, but the staff are also benefiting. And staff really welcome training. If you have a good organisation, people do expect to be trained. So for staff, I think there are three main advantages from training. So it's good because their skills are improving and they're getting more productive and they're feeling that they're developing. They feel more useful and they feel more productive, so they're feeling happier in their job. So again, that's another big benefit we get from training. And then finally, what we find with training is it's a good networking opportunity. Staff make good contacts, they meet with other people in the organisation, and it's a social activity, so people like this as well. So training is good for the company and it's also good for the staff. So what we'll do in the rest of the clip is have a look at some ideas behind how you can design training, a couple of theories about training and education, and hopefully giving you some tips on how to organise your next training day if you're going to have one. So let's go back to some theory. It's said here that there are basically two main theories behind education. Two main theories behind education and training. We have the old-fashioned theory, that is called behaviourist theory, and sometimes it's called animal learning. What we have here effectively is a cause and effect sort of situation. So we have something that happens, an event or something like that, and then we have something resulting from it. We have an effect. And in a simple sort of training or learning procedure, people sort of associate this effect with this cause, and then they sort of learn, well, okay, if I do this, then this is very likely to happen. Now, as you can imagine, this is actually quite basic training. This is quite simple learning, and generally we'd say this is sort of low level. So it depends on what sort of training you're doing, but maybe you'll want to use the other approach to learning, a cognitive approach. And in here, what we say is people just gather information, they think about it, they then put it into categories, they then organize this information, and eventually they can make decisions based on it. So these are the two main methods. And I remember when I was learning about this that I wrote an assignment on this. And the assignment said, which is the best method for training or for education? And it was really a silly question, because I think we try and use both of these basic approaches. It depends really on the type of training that we have. So let's have a look at another theory here that's very useful. Okay, we have two researchers called Honey and Mumford, very well-respected people, and they analysed an enormous number of students, and what they said is there's really four groups of students. 4 ways that people learn stuff, and they gave them 4 names here. So we have one group of people who like theory or general ideas, and then from that they like logical stuff. So these guys, we would call them theorists. They like the theory. Then we've got a second group, and these are like deep thinkers. They take some time. The learning takes a bit of time for them. They have to think about stuff. They have to go back the next week and maybe ask questions. And we call them the reflectors. So when you're organising some educational training, try to incorporate both of those approaches. Try and have some theory, and then try and have some delay between your learning. Maybe have a training day on one week and then a follow-up the next week. That would be appreciated by the reflectors. A third group are activists. Now, these people, they don't like theory, but they really want to actually get involved in stuff. They like to get their hands dirty. They like to actually see problems, solve problems. They are basically practical people at the end of the day. And then finally, we've got the pragmatists. Now, these people are a little bit cynical. If they can't see a payoff to education, they really are not interested in it. They're not interested in the learning. So these people here, what you need to do at the beginning of your training session is say to them, at the end of the training, you will learn X, Y, Z, and it will be really useful to you in your job or your career. It is very practical and it has a big payoff for you. So this is quite difficult. In any training session, we do tend to have people in each 4 groups. So making the training or the education is really quite difficult because we need to cater to all of these people. It's very unusual in a group of students to have all theorists or all pragmatists. You do tend to get quite a big mix of them. So Alex, what would you say when you've done some education or learning? Which group would you fall into here, would you say?
I think I'd relate more to the activists because I like practical things. I think I remember things better when I act them.
When you actually sort of get your hands on something and actually do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's very true. So yeah, there's a lot of people in that group, and it's a very common thing. I mean, for me personally, I'm in this group. I like to know what the theories are because I like to know sort of the overarching ideas. And then for me personally, once I've got the theory, I can then think about the practical applications. But, you know, everyone's different. It depends on your personality at the end of the day. Now, we have another very well-known theory of education and training here. David Kolb wrote this theory some time ago. And what he said here is that people learn through experience. So you have an experience or a thought, and then what you do is you think about that experience. And then once you've thought about it, you come up with a conclusion. You sort of think about, okay, so that experience was caused by this event, or that means something important, or that these 2 things were connected, for example. You draw a conclusion, and then hopefully, if you're actually learning from that experience, you plan your next step. And what I mean by that is you actually put the learning into practice. When you do something the next time, maybe you're a little bit better and you actually can improve your performance. So for me, David Kolb is a really fantastic way of thinking about learning. I like this model and I try and adopt it myself when I'm learning stuff. So a very good model. Have a think about this. You may be able to use this in your own learning. Now, what we'll do, we will do a short question, And we have basically 4 types of learners here. And what we'll do is try and put them into the correct category and then think about how we'd actually teach these guys if we have them as our students. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get some help from Alex. She can really kindly help me. And what I'm going to do is ask her, which one do you think falls into each group? So the first one, I like to try things hands-on. I look at a question or problem first. Which would you say is the most important, or which learning style is this?
I think that's the activist.
Right, okay, so that's an activist. Yeah. This group here, I like to know the purpose or the end result of the training. Which group is that?
That's the pragmatist.
Okay, pragmatist. I think it's better to do the ideas and principles first. They are vital.
That would be the theorist.
Yeah. Good. And finally, I go step by step. I think about each stage before moving on to the next stage.
That's the reflector.
Reflector. Okay, excellent. Now, what we can see from this is that we do have really 4 quite distinct ways of learning. This is a problem for educators. They have to design their learning with these 4 different people in mind. But if you're hoping to have good, successful learning, bear this theory in mind. It's actually very useful for you.